What's up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my Draftkings MMA picks for UFC 263. We have Marvin Vettori going against Israel Adesanya. We have a 14-fight card, so really looking forward to it as far as a DraftKings perspective goes. Had a really good week in DraftKings last week. Was able to finish 7th place. Was really close to getting a takedown. I thought once Rosenstruck got that first-round knockout that I was going to get first place, but I needed less than 2 points from Gregory Rodriguez. I needed him to outscore Ponzinibbio, but really can't complain with a 7th place finish. Hopefully get first place this week, and especially on a card like this with really big prizes, and I'm really looking forward to it. And before we get started, as always, it's a pay-per-view going to be doing the DraftKings contest. To enter the contest, first, leave a like on this video. Second, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And then third, comment down your DraftKings username. I can get up to 200 people in there. Doesn't usually fill, but $25 to first as always. Not much, just something to say thanks for all the support. And other than that, yeah, if you want some extra content, check out the Patreon. Have a lot of stuff going on over there. Just added the optimizer a few months ago. People seem to like that. And also the advanced stats with Uncle Weezy as well. You get the targets, projections, lineup percentages, rankings, access to Discord, DraftKings article, just tons and tons and tons of more content. If you do want more content, the $10 a month, the link is in the description below, or $2.50 per week, some of the best value out there. So with all that out of the way, I say we get into the video here, and we'll start with the fight doesn't go to decision lines with Hill Craig minus 300. And this is a fight where, man, I'd be shocked if this fight went to the distance. Paul Craig in, 19 fights. 19 fights. Paul Craig has went to decision one time, and that was a draw with Shogun, an old Shogun, in a fight where he looked really, really good early, ended up being a draw there. But other than that, it's either, he gets the finish or he gets finished himself. He has been finished, 3 or 4 times? Yeah, 4 times. 3 by knockout and once by submission. And he has an 86% submission rate. So I think 2 things are going to happen in this fight. I think Paul Craig gets this fight down to the mat early and finds a submission, or Jamal Craig knocks this guy out early. I'd be shocked if this hit the scorecards. I'd be even shocked if it hit the second or third round, to be honest. I think this does end quite early, just with the styles of both guys. Both guys are extremely dangerous in their own right. Jamal Hill, 9,400, we'll talk about him a little bit more, but I do like him as a play. But with that said, Paul Craig, it's always hard to count him out. 6 to 800, very cheap. I think I'll have both sides here, but I really do think Jamal Hill does get it done by knockout, probably in the first round as well. I think it scores really high, and this is a fight I'm going to be very high on as a whole as well. Interesting fight here. We have Chase Hooper going against Steven Peterson, and but Peterson's not much of a knockout guy, and Chase Hooper is very durable. I'm kind of, as far as the pick goes, I do like Peterson as a pick, but from a DraftKings perspective, that 7,800 of Hooper really does stick out to me. So I'm going to be more on the Hooper side. Peterson does have a 72% finish rate, which is pretty good, but 39% of those coming by submission. I don't see him submitting Hooper. If anybody gets a submission in this fight, it is probably Chase Hooper, but Steven Peterson in 27 fights has never been submitted. It's an interesting fight. I do think I'll play more of the Hooper side just because of the price, but this is a fight that I'm not overly looking forward to playing. I'd be kind of shocked if Peterson did finish Hooper because of how tough he is, and I don't see him submitting Hooper. So I think I'm going to be playing the Hooper side. If anything, I just have serious concerns about Hooper's, for one, striking, 2, the takedowns, the wrestling. It's just not there. 7% takedown accuracy. But if he can find a way to get it to the mat, yeah, he's really live for a submission. I just don't know if he can get it there. But I will be playing some Hooper just in case he does get it there. But I'm not overly excited about it. All right, next we have Eric Anders going against Darren Stewart. Interesting fight here. We saw what happened in the last fight. It was, an absolute war for as long as it lasted. Anders hurt Stewart very, very bad, was on his way to getting him out of there, and then he had an illegal knee. And, yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I think this is a decent fight to target. You have Anders, who has some takedown upside. Stewart has a 65% takedown defense. I do think Anders can do a little clinching against the cage, get some control time, and also take down Stewart. And then we've seen that Anders definitely has power and could potentially put away Stewart here. On the flip side, Darren Stewart has a ton of power himself. Eric Anders is very, very hard to finish, but we have seen him knock down quite a few times. A lot of those knockdowns coming from the Khalil Roundtree fight, but still, I think it's a decent fight to target just with their price ranges. I think curious to see it. It's going to be at a different weight class than the last fight. The last one was at 185. This is at 205. but it should be a fun fight. It should score decent, you think. It's one of those fights where it can score very, very good, or it's a fight where it can possibly score very, very bad. I'm kind of leaning towards it scoring on the good side, so I have some exposure, but I'm not overly crazy about it. I think there's some fights I like targeting a little bit better, and it's going to be the next one. Fares Ziam going against Luigi Vander Meaney, -130. Fight doesn't go to decision. A fight that, yeah, this fight very well can end inside the distance. I love the price ranges, 8,300, 7,900. Kind of a striker versus grappler here. Vander Meaney being the grappler, Ziam being the striker, but Vander Meaney showed some really good striking in his last fight, knocking out Jason Iari, and that really surprised me. I was very high on Luigi that fight. I forget what price he was on DraftKings, but it wasn't much, and I was like very, very heavy on him. Went out there and got that first round knockout. I was expecting a sub, was not expecting that, but he got it done either way. And the thing with Ziam, he has been finished in both of his losses, well, 2 out of 3 losses, twice by submission. So I think Luigi is really, really live for a submission if he can get this fight down to the mat. Ziam has been taken down like 7 or 8 times in the UFC thus far. He was taken down 5 times by Malarkey, and then 3 times by Dom Match. So he's been taken down 8 times thus far. He's been controlled for about 15 minutes in just 2 fights. So I think if Luigi can't get this down to the mat, I think a submission is very likely. On the flip side, Ziam's a very, very good striker, decent power, and a good finisher overall. 81% finish rate for Ziam. We have seen Luigi Vander Meaney knocked out in his only loss, so I can kind of see a Vander Meaney sub or maybe a Ziam knockout as well. Either way, I see it scoring pretty high. I do like Vander Meaney quite a bit, especially at the underdog tag at 7,900. All right, getting into our core plays, Jamal Hill, 9,400. And yeah, I like Hill quite a bit. It's one of those fights where I do think you have to target it. It's one of those fights where I do think it ends quite early. And I'm kind of more on the side of Paul Craig losing by first round knockout. I think he's been knocked out in the first round like 3 different times. And the other loss was going to be the Jimmy Crute loss where Crute submitted him in that 3rd round there. But yeah, regardless, 3 first-round knockouts, losses by Paul Craig, and Hill does have a lot of power. He has a lot of volume. He has a really good gas tank. I think that if Craig cannot get those takedowns, I do think that's going to expend a ton of energy. We saw it last week with guys like Zalal and Jordan Levitt. If you can't get those takedowns, it's going to really hurt your gas tank. And I can kind of see a situation where Craig doesn't get those takedowns, he gets tired, and Hill eventually finishes them. But on the flip side, if Craig does get him down, I do think Hill could be in a ton of trouble. Hill has been taken down 6 times, all by Darko Stosic. Yes, he was able to get up, but will he be able to get from Paul Craig? I don't know. But I do lean towards him stuffing the takedowns and knocking out Paul Craig in that first round. And he is, probably, one of my favorite plays, if not my favorite play in that 9K range. Matt Frevola, 8,900. So this is a very interesting play here. It was supposed to be Matt Frevola versus Frank Camacho. And against Frank Camacho, honestly did not have much interest in Matt Frevola at this price tag. But Frank Camacho got in a car accident. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But we have a new opponent in Terence Mckenney. We do not have his price tag yet, but this is a fight that I think is going to be a must target just based off of the style of Terence Mckenney. Terence Mckenney has never seen the scorecards in 13 fights. I don't think Terence Mckenney has even, his fights have hit the over 2.5 in any of his fights. So his fights are ending fairly early. Mckenney's a really good grappler, really good wrestler. He can get it down to the mat. Frevola does not have the best takedown defense, sitting at 40%. A lot of that due to Arman Sarukian taking him down like 11 times. But yeah, I think this is going to be an absolute war. I see somebody getting finished. The only thing I don't like is Frevola, not much of a power guy, only a 13% knockout rate, 50% finish rate overall, but still, I think he can very well get a finish in this fight. He's a grinder. He's going to have the cardio advantage here. I think he can, outlast Mckenney, but Mckenney's going to be very, very live for an early finish in this fight. But if he does not get it, especially coming in on short notice, I know he just fought either last week or 2 weeks ago. I do think Frevola can take over and get the finish himself. So a fight that I'm absolutely going to be targeting. I don't know what the price on Mckenney is yet, but I think Mckenney's going to be a good dog, and I think Frevola at 8,900 is a good play as well. I see this fight ending within the first 2 rounds for sure. And then we have Luigi Vander Meaney, talked about him a little bit, 100% finish rate. I always like targeting these guys that have never won by decision, so they have a ton of upside, and we're getting him at underdog price at 7,900, which I really do agree with. I think the line should be flipped here. I think Vander Meaney should be 8,300, and Ziam should be 7,900 here. Vander Meaney is going to have takedown upside, Control time upside. We've seen Zion controlled for 15, 16 minutes thus far in just 2 fights. We've seen him taken down 8 times in 2 fights. So why can't Luigi Vander Meaney take him down here and submit him? Luigi Vander Meaney is a legit black belt, has a bunch of submissions on his record, and the 100% finish rate I really do like, and he's shown some power as well, so I think he has multiple ways to win this fight, but ultimately he needs to get this down to the mat. I don't see him outstriking Zion, but I do think if he does get it down to the mat, which I do think he does, I do think he has a significant advantage. On the flip side, I'll talk about a little bit. I will be playing some Zion. I will be playing this fight as a whole, but I really do like the underdog price of Zion Vander Meaney at 7,900 there. And then Deiveson Figueiredo, 9,100. I think he would have scored like 98, 99 points if the fight was not a draw, if he did get the decision, but it was a draw nonetheless. And I'm going right back to Deiveson Figueiredo here at that $9,100 price tag. He has a ton of power. Moreno's very tough. Moreno's never been knocked out, but I think if someone's going to knock out Moreno, it's going to be Deiveson Figueiredo. Tons of power. I do think that he can score well if it does go to decision again. But ultimately, I really do think he has a really good chance to finish Brandon Moreno here. In this fight as a whole, probably does score very, very well as it did last time combined with both guys. I just see Figueiredo being the more likely guy to get that finish, and I do think that finish comes. If you listen to the Figueiredo interviews, he is very, very upset with Brandon Moreno. He said something like he called him a liar. The dude wants to kill Brandon Moreno, so I do think he does finish him at some point, and it scores a ton of points along the way. 9,100, I do like that price tag quite a bit. Figueiredo is definitely a finisher. He has won the majority of his fights by finish, sitting at an 85% finish rate, 45% by knockout, 40% by submission. I'm leaning more towards that knockout for Figueiredo, but even if it does go to decision, I think he scores very, very well, high output, some control time, maybe a takedown or two in a 5-round fight. I really, really like Deiveson Figueiredo at 9,100 this week. All right, getting into our GPP plays here, we have Israel Adesanya 9,300. So I completely faded Adesanya in the last fight against Jan Blachowicz. I do think he'll be pretty high owned. Obviously, it's the main event. People want to target the main event. So what I might do is go underexposed to Adesanya and maybe even this fight as a whole. There's just other guys I like more in this 9K range. I like, Figueiredo more. I like Jamal Hill more. I like Matt Frevola more. Matt Frevola 8,900. So I don't know how much Adesanya I'm going to get to. He's not going to get takedowns. He's not going to get control time. Maybe he gets a knockdown or two, but Marvin Vettori, very tough, never been knocked out, never been knocked down as well. So I don't know if the ownership's getting too high on Adesanya. I might just go like way underexposed and maybe it'll work out. But he has 5 rounds to work with. I do think he has a nice floor. I do think he wins the fight. It's just no takedowns. Probably doesn't get a finish. If he does, it's probably late. I just don't see him scoring all that well. So I think he's a good play. I think he's fine. But on a 14-fight slate, factoring in the ownership, I just don't know how much Israel Adesanya I'm going to get to. But if you like him, play him. He's a fine play. I just don't know how much I'm going to have as of now. But I will pick him to win. There's just other plays I like more. Farah Zion, 8,300, talked about a little bit. Luigi Vander Meaney has never seen the scorecards. Zion, very good striker. Luigi has been knocked out in his only loss. I think if Zion wins, there's a good chance it is by knockout, maybe a late finish if Luigi does slow down. So I like Zion, 8,300. I like this fight as a whole, more on the Luigi side personally, but I do see this fight scoring well as a whole, and I see this fight having a great potential to finish as well. So Zion, I think, is a fine play in tournaments. Joanne Calder with 8,200. Interesting play here. I think this fight as a whole is going to be pretty low owned, but I always, tend to target Calderwood on DraftKings just because of the output. She's going to average 6.59 significant strikes per minute. That is a ton, and Murphy only averages 3.8. I really like Calderwood to win. I really think she can score well. Maybe she does get a takedown or two. The only thing I'm worried about is Murphy kind of taking her down and laying on her, but I think Calderwood should get this win. I think she's going to have a massive advantage on the feet, and I think she's a much better fighter overall as well. So I like Calderwood, 8,200. I don't think she has like an insane high ceiling, but I do think she has a nice little floor with the amount of volume she does throw. This probably does go the distance. Could be enough to get an optimal lineup. It depends what else happens on the slate, but she's going to have an ability to score pretty well with that volume advantage there. So just about 7 significant strikes per minute landed by Calderwood, which is crazy. She does, average about 2 takedowns per 50 minutes as well, 55% accuracy, which is very, very good. So maybe she does mix in a takedown as well. So yeah, I can see her scoring good. I can see her scoring good. So 8,200, I will have some Joanne Calder win. And then Eric Anders, 8,600. He was on his way to absolutely breaking the slate in his last fight where he hurt Darren Stewart very, very bad and then had that illegal knee. And I forget what he scored in that the no contest, but he scored quite a bit. And he was so close to getting that first round finish, and that illegal knee came. Do I see the same thing happening here? And then he gets the finish? Maybe, maybe not. It's a new fight. It's up a weight class. I do think there's some other factors to take into consideration, but the game plan it's written on the wall. He's going to be, the bigger fighter. He can, hold Stewart against the cage. I think he can work that wrestling as well, take him down. Stewart has been taken down a ton of times in the UFC. I think he has potential to score pretty well here at 8,600 with the takedowns, control time. Not a lot of high output, but we saw that he could hurt Darren Stewart, so I don't know if he finishes him, but I do think with that wrestling, I do think he has potential to score decent. So we'll be having some Eric Anders. Getting into our live dogs, Chase Super 7,800. I talked about it a little bit. Not in love with this play. I do think it'll be popular as well, which does scare me. But if you can't get this fight down to the mat, I do think a submission could happen. Peterson, 27 fights, has never been submitted. He's a brown belt in BJJ. Hooper is a black belt, but Hooper's grappling is definitely legit. I just don't know if he can get it there. If he can, that's great. I do think a sub could happen for sure. It's just, I don't know. 7% takedown accuracy. It's scary. It's scary, but it's hard to ignore the upside of Chase Super. Chase Super has finished every one of his fights but one, I believe. So I will have some. I will have some because you kind of have to. But the ownership is going to scare me a little bit. But I do, it's hard to ignore the upside of Chase Super if he is able to get this down to the mat. Brad Riddell, 7,700. Yeah, it should be a fun fight here going against Drew Dober. I think this fight as a whole has potential to score pretty good. And I really like Brad Riddell at this underdog price tag of 7,700. I think this is a pretty even, well-matched fight here. And 7,700 is not bad for Brad Riddell. And I think an interesting aspect of this fight is the takedown defense of, both guys, but especially on the Drew Dober side. 55% takedown defense, which is very, very bad, especially considering the sample size he has. He's been taken down in a ton of fights. And something really interesting to note is Brad Riddell has at least one takedown in all 3 of his UFC fights. So could he make it 4 in a row here? Possibly. So that could be a path here, and it could score, decent. Maybe get a takedown or 2. Maybe rack up some control time. But ultimately, this is going to play out on the feet. I don't really see either guy knocking either guy out. Both guys are very tough. Drew Dober has been knocked out once in 33 fights. Brad Riddell has never been knocked out. I could see this going to the scorecards, but even then, I see it scoring well with all the volume. But Brad Riddell in a very close fight, very evenly matched fight, 7,700. I do like Brad Riddell to win, and I do like him on DraftKings. Darren Stewart, 7,600. He has a lot of power. He has a lot of power. Good price tag here. I feel like he's going to be very, 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 very low owned because we saw the fight play out last time. We saw what happened. I think people are really going to kind of be sleeping on Darren Stewart here. I'm picking Eric Anders. I think, the majority of the people in the world are picking Eric Anders, but sometimes Eric Anders does not show up to fights. I don't know what it is. Sometimes he shows up, sometimes he doesn't. This could be a fight where he does not show up. Eric Anders has been finished once, but he's very tough. 4 decision wins from him. Darren Stewart, decent finisher, 66% finish rate, 58% by knockout, has a lot of power. Maybe Stewart can catch him. But man, I don't know. This could be one of those fights where it surprises a lot of people. A lot of people do expect Eric Anders to come right back out and do what he did last time. I just don't think it's that easy. So Darren Stewart, I will have a look at him just due to the ownership. And, last time he was a favorite. And he was a favorite for a reason more than likely. So I will take some shots on Darren Stewart. I don't love it, but I do think it'll be low owned and has potential to score decent as a whole. And then Terence Mckenney, don't know the price tag yet. I don't know if they're going to slide him in what Frank Camacho was. I believe Camacho was like 7,300. So if he is indeed 7,300 or even cheaper, I really do like Terence Mckenney as a live dog here. I think this fight's going to finish within the first 2 rounds. Mckenney is, one of those killer be killed fighters. He has never seen the scorecards. He has never seen anything past the 2-minute and 30 mark of that 3rd round, I don't believe. And yeah, he has a lot of upside, especially with the wrestling, the grappling, has a really nice head kick as well, has lots of power, and he's a finisher himself. 40% knockout rate for Mckenney, 60% submission rate. He has been knocked out twice. Frivola has been knocked out once, and Frivola was knocked out, who was it? It was, Frivola was knocked out by, what's-his-face? Marco Polo Reyes. Yeah, Marco Polo Reyes, which is a huge huge red flag. If Marco Polo Reyes can knock you out, I think that, McKenney can knock you out as well. So I'll have some McKenney. I'll have a lot of this fight as a whole. I do think it finishes within the first 2 rounds, especially considering McKenney coming in on short notice. Yes, he just fought last week or so, but still short notice nonetheless. So I'll have some shots for sure. I wish I knew his price tag, but I do not know it yet. I'm assuming they slide him in where Frank Camacho was at 7,300, but maybe they'll put him even cheaper, which, even better. I'll take some shots on him for sure. Getting into our pump plays, Paul Craig, 6,800. So, yeah, Jamal Hill, definitely untested. His takedown defense is sitting on paper at like 53%, which is not great. But that was all to him getting taken down 6 times by Darko Sosic. In that fight, he did get up 6 times really easily, but still, I'm just curious about what happens if Paul Craig gets you down, 6 times, or even just once. Like, what happens? Are you able to get up? Paul Craig is a legit grappler, very dangerous on the mat, 86% finish rate by submission for Paul Craig with a 100% finish rate overall. I don't know. Hill, I do think he personally stuffs the takedowns and gets the knockout, but if Paul Craig is able to get him down, Hill's going to be in an absolute world of trouble. So I'll play both sides here. I think Paul Craig is a very interesting pump play. Don't think he'll be too high-owned. I think Hill will be one of the more popular plays on the slate, but I think Paul Craig is always a pump play to consider just with his style, the killer be killed style. If he does get this down to the mat, I do think he can have some success. Marvin Vettori, 6,900. I'm personally picking Adesanya, but it's really hard to ignore this price tag at 6,900. I think it's a good pump play, especially considering Vettori's going to wrestle. He's going to go for takedowns, going to get control time. I don't know if he's going to have, well, I do know, he's not going to have as much success as he did against Kevin Holland, where he had 20 minutes of control time, 11 takedowns. He's not going to do that, but still, maybe he does, get 5, 6 takedowns. Maybe he does get some control time. Maybe he does squeak out a decision, and at that price tag, he's going to score very well. I also think he is live for an early submission. Don't think it's all that likely, but it could happen. So I like Marvin Vettori as a pump play, 6,900 there. The price tag is just way too cheap to not take a couple shots. Getting into our fades, I have 2 here. I had 2 last week. I think last week I had Tanner Boser as a fade and Muslim Salikov. So 2 good fades last week. Hopefully do it again here. Movsar Evloev, more of a decision guy, does not have a finish in the UFC. A 50% finish rate overall, which is the second worst finish rate on the slate right behind Bilal Muhammad. I mean, yeah, I don't really see him knocking out Hakeem. I don't really see him submitting him. Maybe, if anything, it's going to be a submission. Hakeem Dawodu has been submitted once in his only loss, but I think this does go to decision as a whole. I do think Evloev wins. I just don't think he scores, crazy good. I think he has like a nice floor due to his wrestling upside. I just don't see him controlling Hakeem Dawodu for longer periods of time. I can see him scoring like 85, maybe 90 points and a win, and at that price, I don't think it's going to be enough to get on the optimal lineup, especially with the finish. So I'm going to fade Movsar Evloev here for the most part, and then Pandy Kianzad at 8,800. Pretty easy fade here for me. I think she's not scored more than like 80 points in all of her wins thus far in the UFC. Going against Alexis Davis, who is very tough. Alexis Davis probably does get a takedown or 2 and some control time in this fight. So I just don't really see any reason to play Pandy Kianzad, especially on a 14-fight slate. No thank you. Pretty easy fade for me. All right, guys, that's about it. It's always a great time to become a member of the Patreon and receive full access to my model. You got the premium projections, the new optimizer, the GBP lineup percentages, DraftKings article, and access to Discord. Also got the the stat model courtesy of Uncle Weezy. Got the advanced stats. Got the matchup template as well. And I just want to point out the new content. Monday, me and Uncle Weezy are doing a main event prediction video. Got a live stream on Friday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, a live stream on Saturday, 1 hour prior to the prelims, and then the Sunday recap show at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. So lots of new stuff coming your way. Make sure you guys hit the like and also subscribe so you don't miss out on all the new content. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys can leave a like on your way out, and be sure to comment down your DraftKings usernames, I will get you guys in the contest for $25 to the winner. So that's about it, guys, and good luck for UFC 263.